Hi, everybody. Miguel Hernandez here. We're just going to allow a minute or two for folks to continue to come in. So please bear with us. Hope you're having a great day. Okay, great. I think we've achieved critical mass here. So thank you all for um, allowing us a minute or two to get started. So welcome to today's SSMP Community Engagement Committee meeting, March 27th. Hopefully you all had a chance to review the agenda we sent earlier. We're going to have a good discussion today on multiple items. So looking forward to that. Today I'm joined by our co-chair, Sylvia Paz. Unfortunately, our co-chair, Becky Terrazas Baxter, will not be able to join us. So I'll be tag teaming this meeting with our co-chair, Sylvia Paz, as we go and progress throughout our meeting. So if we can go to our next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Just want to go over some of the basic instructions on how to use our Zoom webinar and let you know that, as always, we have interpretation available to Spanish. To select that, you will go to the bottom of your screen, and on that ribbon of options, you'll see interpretation. So you'll need to select that and choose your language of preference. I think by default it might be that you have English, but you might need to select mute original audio in case you're hearing both languages at the same time. It just depends on your case. And I'll go over the same instructions in Spanish. Para los que nos están acompañando en el día de hoy, bienvenidos. Nada más para darles las instrucciones de cómo seleccionar el lenguaje en español. Como siempre, tenemos disponible la traducción en vivo y para activarla necesita ir a las opciones de la parte de abajo de su pantalla, seleccionando la opción de interpretación o interpretation si está en inglés y seleccionar el lenguaje en español. Y al seleccionarlo también le sugiero seleccione la opción de mute original audio para evitar que escuche la reunión en dos lenguajes al mismo tiempo. Si tiene alguna duda, con confianza puede levantar su mano y lo podemos asistir. Okay, and just again, some other instructions on how to use the Zoom webinar. We have a the raise your hand feature. If you have any questions, we'll have time for Q&A throughout the presentation and throughout our meeting here today. We also have a Q&A box available for you to use. And also closed captioning is also available throughout our meetings. So those options are also located at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions or any trouble accessing it, please let us know and can assist you. Okay, next slide. Okay, and at this point, I'll pass it over to our co-chair, Sylvia Paz.
Thank you, Miguel. Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here with you and looking forward to having a conversation today about engagement in the following activities around the SSMP. Well, this is the way we're going to do introductions. I think most of us know each other already. So if you are a real, consistent participant, you can feel free, please use the chat. It'll save us time. Just type in your name, your organization. But we do have with us Joe Shea today, and I believe this is the first time that Joe, who's the Secretary of Consultancy Policy, is joining us today. So I would like to give Joe a few minutes, if he can please come on unmute and introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. And thanks everyone for allowing me a couple minutes just to speak with you. As Sylvia mentioned, my name is Joe Shea. I am the recently appointed Assistant Secretary for Salt and Sea Policy at the California Natural Resources Agency. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in December of 2024, so I'm going on month 4 here. And this is my first community engagement committee meeting. So I'm really excited to engage with you all and learn more about how our program can communicate the progress that we're making at the sea with you all, and work with you and partner with you to improve our efforts and to do even more in the months and years ahead. I will just say, I spent the last 6 years or so working in the governor's office, covering a bunch of environmental and natural resources policy areas, and have always had a real soft spot in my heart for the Salton Sea, and was proud to work on funding for the SSMP when I was in the governor's office. And now I'm really eager to just continue making sure that we're working towards our goals, our targets, our obligations at the sea, and doing so in a way that is resonant, and that folks understand, the work that we're doing and the impact that it's having. And because of that, these meetings are just really essential for informing our work. So that's why I'm excited to be here with you all, and looking forward to getting started with our agenda. So I'll pass it back over to you, Sylvia. Thanks again.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for joining us. Happy to have you here. Is there anybody else who is new? I know that in the absence of Rebecca, there might be somebody from Imperial, yes, and from Imperial County. So if there is, if you can just use your hands up so that we can recognize you. I'm just not sure if there's anybody else that's new to the space. Guillermo. So yeah, you're welcome to come off mute and turn on your camera if you want, and just we want to introduce yourself.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, it looks like I'm having some technical issues here. My camera option is not populating, but yeah, my name is Guillermo Hernandez. I'm a district representative with the Office of Senator Steve Padilla. Happy to be here. I'm also based in the Imperial County, so thank you guys for organizing this and for inviting our office.
Thank you, Guillermo. And I see Armando Avalos as well.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. Armando Avalos with the State Senator Steve Padilla's office as well. I have Jocelyn Ramirez here with me.
Hi.
And we are out of the Coachella Valley office.
Thank you for joining us, Jocelyn and Armando. Okay. Well, thank you. And again, feel free if you haven't chatted in, your name, just say a quick hello to introduce yourself on the chat function. But we will continue with item 2 on the agenda. And this is a time for the committee members. If you have any updates, we're going to review the agenda before I go to number 2, I guess. The agenda is on the screen. So we are on item number 2. So members of the committee, if you have any comments, updates, or future events that you want to share with us, now is the time. You can use the raise hand function as well, and then I can start calling on as I see those hands coming up. Daniela?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I am with Imperial Valley Equity and Justice and wanted to make a quick announcement about the Lithium Valley specific plan. Obviously, it has implications for the Salton Sea region. And so even though the county hasn't updated their website, they did extend the public comment period. They sent that update via email. So I did want to let you all know that there is still time to comment. The deadline was extended until May 5th. And I just put a link in the chat so that you can view where you can submit comments and more information about the Lithium Valley specific plan. For those of you that don't know, the Lithium Valley specific plan is a sort of master plan for that region for lithium related developments and other industries. And so it's a 51,000 acre near the sea. And so I do encourage everybody to submit a comment, and Imperial Valley Equity and Justice Coalition can provide some support depending on, we have office hours in Calipatria every day. And we also are going to Nyland on Wednesdays and in El Centro on a few other dates. So definitely check out our Instagram and our and this website from the county to be able to submit those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. I see Carrie Morrison.
Hello, everyone. Good to be with you. Thank you. Yeah, a couple things. We are hosting an Earth Day event. Been doing an annual Earth Day event for many years on April 26th. And this is tying in with the SSMP's seed collecting event. That's going to be Saturday in Vista Del Mar from 9 to 11 at the existing site. SSMP staff and consultants will be collecting seeds, and then they need volunteers to help process these seeds and make sure that they get in the right state and place so that they can be helpful on the playa. So we're going to be supporting with that. And then after that, well, and that is also in partnership, I believe, and maybe there should be some sort of conversation that we have later with Autobahn Alianza and Comité Civico with the seed collecting. And then after, we're going to be supporting with some organization for a beach cleanup, which will be in the Vista Del Mar area. And we're still getting a few more details going for that, but that should be until about 1 o'clock after the seed collecting event on the Saturday, the 26th. We'll send out some more information on that. And then I do want to invite people to attend the next California State Water Board meeting. The California State Water Board are coming to Coachella, and that, please correct me if I don't have that date, May 21st from 9 to 6 p.m. And so that's a good opportunity to make sure that Sacramento remembers that we're here and that these need to be considered at the state level, perhaps more so than they have been. And then also just one little thing, I think that we haven't been updating the SSMP website as well as could be. Here is the link for the engagement committee meeting. It wasn't updated for this meeting, so just encouraging us to be a little bit more on top of things to make sure that the public knows how to come support. So thank you so much, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Carrie. I don't see any other hands. And so that, Carrie, was your comments perfect segue into the next agenda item, because we're going to be discussing or doing an overview of the 2025 SSMP annual report. And as you know, this report will be covered during that water board meeting. So I, at this point, will introduce Mario Llanos as well as Miguel Hernandez.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mario Llanos, Deputy Assistant Secretary for California Natural Resources Agency. I work in the Salt and Sea Management Program and work out of Imperial County. Good to be here with you all today. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the annual report. Back to the previous slide, please. There you go. We are going to go in depth in the annual report. We do want to give folks an opportunity to read into it and take a look at it before we dive into it, so that you're well prepared for any questions or clarifications on things you want to ask during those public meetings, which we will talk about later. But I just wanted to kind of give a plug about our annual report, which is pictured here. It will be released hopefully tomorrow in English and Spanish, and it details the SSMP's work from the 2024 calendar year. It should be on our website tomorrow by close of business at www.saltandsea.ca.gov. Here our cover photo, which is a preview here, an early preview, shows CDFW conducting fish surveys on the Salton Sea in 2024. This is exciting because it's been some time that this has happened due to a lack of a safe way to launch a boat on the sea. So now with the new boat ramp at SCH, these fish surveys are now able to resume. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the annual report, the water board order that we operate under requires this annual report to include milestones completed, project areas completed, upcoming projects, and status of financial resources and permits, and also to identify departures from targeted acreages and plans to address those deficiencies. However, if you do look through the report, you'll see many more details about our program and the things that we do on a yearly basis. Next slide. So the format's similar to previous formats. It begins with an executive summary, which is a high-level summary of our previous year's accomplishments and highlights. It's, folks that just want to kind of get everything in one place. This is a really good place to get just a high-level summary of everything that's in the annual report. And then when you go through and break down the chapters here, for chapter 1, that's the introduction and purpose. And here you'll find a lot of the notable highlights of the accomplishments from the SSMP in 2024. Everything that was addressed in that previous slide, everything that relates to the water order and details of what the work that we've done relating to the water order. Chapter 2 is SSMP project delivery, and here you'll find details about ongoing and upcoming projects that the SSMP is working on. You'll also find non-SSMP projects, but projects relevant to the Salton Sea. Work happening by our partners at IID and other projects like the New River project with the City of Calexico. You'll find details and pictures and just updates here in this section. Chapter 3, you'll find partnerships. It's here we detail our many partnerships that make our work possible with many in this space here today. And so just updates on how we interact with the different partners around the sea and just some of the key work that happened over 2024. Chapter 4 is community engagement. In this chapter, we detail engagement we've accomplished in the previous year and ways that you can stay engaged with our programs. We talk about things like our project tracker and you just being in contact through our newsletter and signing up for our newsletter and how you can be up to date on the latest that's happening around the sea with relation to our program. Chapter 5 is a planning chapter. In this chapter, you'll find updates on our various planning documents for project implementation. You'll find updates on long-term planning and details on our organizational capacity and funding for our programs. And then chapter 6 is the next steps chapter. This chapter includes next steps for our program in the near term and adds some detail about current conditions of the sea and how that guides our project planning. We also detail our potential pathway to complete our 29,800 acre water board order target. And so there's a lot of great details in that chapter 6 on these items. And then finally, we have the appendices, which do a deeper dive into existing conditions at the sea and discuss some of the surveys that have happened over 2024. And then also funding details. This is a great funding table that shows all the funding for our program for the previous year. Next slide. And then, so like I mentioned, we'll be diving into, we want to give folks a chance to review the annual report and have a good, several weeks to do so. And so we do have 2 planned community meetings, one in-person meeting that will be an in-person only meeting at West Shores Community Center on April 30th at 5:30 p.m. And then we'll have a virtual Zoom webinar, much like the one today, with the same subject matter, but you know, on a Zoom platform. And that'll be the next day on May 1st from 12 to 2. And with that, I'll turn it over to Miguel, my colleague Miguel, to talk about these meetings in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. So just real quick, I want to share with you, you know, what we do for outreach and promotion of this type of events. What you see before you is the event flyer. Perhaps you're the first ones to see it. We haven't printed it yet. It was just recently developed and approved. So like Mario mentioned, we'll have a couple meetings back to back, April 30th and May 1st. The first in-person meeting will be in-person only to encourage in-person participation. And the second one will be the virtual only mode. So we're using, as usual, we'll do our monthly newsletter. It would likely go out tomorrow once we upload our annual report. You know, with the overview of the annual report, but also sending the invitation with the exact locations of the meeting and the Zoom link to join on May 1st. So that will be coming out, fingers crossed, tomorrow. I think we're on the right track to make it happen. And then we also submitted it for it to be posted on the West Shores News Gazette for the April edition. I believe that should go out next week's on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. So right after our newsletter going out. And I think that's, you know, since it's in West Shores, what a better way to connect with folks in the region there. And as usual, we'll get this flyers printed and begin distribution and canvassing. As always, please let us know if you have the bandwidth and want to help us get the word out. If you need a specific amount of printed flyers, we can coordinate, you know, drop off or picking it up with us, and we can get those to you if you have the bandwidth to help us get the word out. We'll also do radio and digital PSA as we normally do. We'll also have a social media kit that we will share with the whole group. Again, if you have the bandwidth to distribute that to your networks and through your social media channels, we'll appreciate that. Of course, as always, we're trying to get as many participants as we can. We're looking at, you know, having two sort of different formats, and I guess that goes into our next slide. The in-person will look at that a lot different to what the virtual space will look like. For the in-person, we're looking at something similar to what we did last year, which is a general overview of the annual report, a little bit more in depth of what Mario just mentioned a couple minutes ago, more into, you know, specifics of what can be found in each of the chapters, and perhaps some breakouts, specifically talking about our projects, the latest and greatest on the project tracker, and something along those lines. However, we want to bring it back to this group for discussion to see how we can enhance the experience for the in-person meeting. The virtual space will be a straightforward overview presentation. You know, being virtual, it's not so engaging. We're giving it a few tries, and it seems that it works a lot better and more efficient if we do it that way on the virtual space with the presentation overview of the annual report, and we allow sufficient time for public comments in the virtual space. So again, to bring us back to the discussion, I want to ask you guys, you know, just taking this question as reference to help us kind of guide the conversation here today. And I want to hear from you guys. What can we do, you know, a bit different, or just enhance our or the participants' experience overall when they attend our meetings? So most of you kind of know the nature of our meetings and the nature of the annual report itself. I want to learn from you guys if you think that perhaps what we did last year with the annual report, or maybe the experience doing the community needs reports, if you liked some of that or did not like some of that, please let us know. We just want to make it a little bit better every time. So I also want to ask you, like, if there is any strategies that you use to have folks, you know, speak their voices, have them be ready for the meeting, and you know, we want to hear from them as well, not only be one-sided conversation. So if you have any thoughts of what can we implement as part of this upcoming meetings, so we can start prepping for those as we move through the days. And also if there's any specific tools that you have used in the past. I know we've used some polling exercises. We've perhaps used a mural board. But I know there's a lot, and there AI might also be out there, might be a tool. But just throwing it out there, if folks have a specific recommendations that maybe you used over the last year that worked well for you in one of your public meetings, we want to hear and learn from you all how we can make it better. And as far as the format, how we can frame the meeting in a way that makes sense for folks, that we're not just providing information and go to the website and check our annual report. We want to go a bit beyond that and be able to explain the annual report and what's in it. But furthermore, we want to hear from their end and how we can make it more engaging, also enhance our transparency. What are we missing, so we can have that level of conversation with folks during the public meeting in person. So I'll open up the floor for anyone that would like to chime in here. And I'll be taking some notes as to how we can make the best use of everybody's time during those upcoming public meetings.
Anyone has any thoughts around the questions that Miguel is seeking? Essentially, how do we make a meeting around the annual Salton Sea Management Program report, something that our community members will be engaged in and benefit from? And so you can use the raise hand feature. I have Isame.
Hi, everybody. So I'll just go ahead and jump in here. I just think first and foremost, I think I was present at the past at last year's workshops, and honestly, I think that something that really worked and captured and gravitated a lot of the residents to want to participate is the visuals. I think the way that it was strategized around like different stations and like sectioning every area into, like, for example, I know that we had Vivian and Mario and Miguel structured around, like, what the expertise is that they bring to the SSMP dynamic, and I think that was very welcoming and it was very helpful. So I think kind of repeating that interaction, I think, really worked. My only feedback is just in regards to Spanish and translation. I know that we did have a couple of individuals that were primarily Spanish speaking, and I know that facilitating that can get a little bit difficult, especially kind of navigating the different stations, but then also continuing to offer, right, that quality engagement. I just would recommend, having that translator note from the beginning of the meeting that they will be fully participating, and just to flag them down throughout the conversations, just to make sure that nobody gets kind of left behind. But just overall, I think it worked really well. I think something that the team could potentially use this year too is the Mentimeter. I thought that that was a really useful tool because it helped really connect a lot of the residents down to the end of the meeting. And so I think something around that would definitely work again. And then as for the question, I know Miguel stated, how can we best motivate participants to speak up? I think just really bringing some of the language down to a more community level and friendlier understanding overall really helps crack that little nutshell and ensure, right, that they're comfortable. But aside from that, I mean, I think all of the technology and the tools and the resources that you all offer, I'm looking forward to see a little bit more engagement and interaction with the project tracker. I use the project tracker myself, and so I think a lot of people are really curious as to how to access it, how to navigate it, and I think there's a lot of potential to use that with this meeting. But yeah, that's it for my feedback. I'll hand it over to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Isame. Very great recommendations. Next, I have Patrick O'Dowd.
So my hand is up and I can't explain why. I keep trying to lower it and it simply won't go down. So I think I'm going to let Carrie jump in here while I try to lower my hand.
Okay, thank you.
There it goes.
Good to hear you. Ismay, excellent recommendations. I encourage and agree with everything you said there. That was fantastic. I am really happy to see that these meetings have been getting much more organized than in past years. The structure is better. It is more accessible for people. It's a much smoother running system, and so that's an absolute relief. Something that we haven't been doing, and I don't know if this is comfortably a position of the SSMP, but something for us to contemplate is we're still tens of thousands of acres behind the kind of playa coverage that we'd like. Generally, there's too much dust. Our biodiversity has been pretty shot. Something that we don't do in the state is ask for help from residents. It's more of a one-way, this is what's happening, and we'd love to hear your feedback, but this is what's happening. We don't need any help. And we do need help. And the state needs help. It's under, this program is far smaller than it needs to be to handle the issues at hand. And so I'd love to see if there were ways that encouraged volunteerism, that made it easier for people to get involved and help out on the playa, or made it easier to get involved with the many different NGOs that are now supporting various aspects of restoration. But we do need help. And I think we're really missing a mark if we act like a lot of these residents don't know what they're talking about. Many of them are experts, or at least really know how the ground, wind, and water works in the area. And they're our biggest asset. And we don't ask them for anything. And I think we could probably come up with some suggestions. If people want to get involved, let's maybe give some more clear examples of how they can. They want to help. They don't want to stand idly by while their neighbors get sick. While the SSMP is working so much better than it used to, it's still nowhere near comprehensive enough for what we need to take care of what we're facing here. So I'd love us to think about some ways that we can ask for help from people that want to help. Also, wondering if in that realm of thought, if we're going to face any challenges with any funding that may have been earmarked from the federal government, with all of the different changes in administration, with many different DEI and many different climate things that are being really wiped out of some of our federal systems. These can be conversations that I believe we should be having. And our SSMP committee is the most organized committee that has leaders from the region that meets regularly. And I believe at some times when big things happen, we need to pivot and have some of these hard conversations so all of the organizations that we're representing can act quickly. So I just encourage us not to be a mouthpiece for the good things that the state are doing, which is nowhere near enough. It just is what it is. The state needs help. We all need help. We need to find ways to ask for help from the residents who are experts, or at least really want to help and have passion. And let's consider how the state funding mechanisms may change and wipe out some of our projects. And if we need to adapt to that, how can we work together? Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And I have Tom Sefton.
Hello, thanks. And specific to how to motivate participants to speak up and ask questions, I would suggest when you're doing that initial presentation of the components of the report, pause section to section for just a couple of minutes and ask for questions section by section rather than wait for questions all at the end. And that will help people to be thinking about what you just talked about and comment on what you just talked about. And then also following up on what Carrie just said, in some of those sections where it's relevant, you might take the opportunity to ask for suggestions from attendants at that meeting on do they have some ideas on how this particular aspect of the Salton Sea challenges could be more effectively addressed. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Daniela.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those all sound like really great suggestions. I would add a couple of things regarding the just generally the way that the annual meetings have been structured. I think that it is really important information that comes out of these annual reports. The feedback that I get is that like folks still don't get the update, even though there's this effort to have this meeting and to have, you know, reports out. It's a pretty big report. I certainly would love to have copies because when we do, and I got some at the last hearing, when I do have, I take them with us and our tabling, and I think people find it helpful, or at least some people take it, right? But I guess my feedback is probably for like next year and like consideration for the future. You know, when we're trying to get the word out on something really important, like one meeting and one virtual is just like not enough to get the message out. So, you know, it is an annual meeting. You know, there are important updates. And so I do think that, you know, funds and planning can be, you know, intentionally put in a way that we are able to do more of like a, you know, Salton Sea tour on these updates, having one in Salton Sea, having one in, you know, Brawley, having one in, you know, the Nyland, like making sure that I know that there's a virtual option, but I do think that if we're really trying to get the word out on these updates, and in like hearing community, and so that community long term is able to feel like, yeah, I am being considered, I am getting these updates consistently on a year-to-year basis, that there is this greater effort to get the word out. And I think that will require way more than what we're currently doing at one meeting and, you know, one virtual. And so, yeah, that was one of those feedback. The other piece of feedback is, you know, again, really great information in the report. It is a really lengthy report. And so I am wondering if there's a possibility to, I don't know, I haven't seen the social media toolkit, and I don't know if it's like just a flyer, but I do think that at least for the people that are on social media, if there is a print version of a executive summary or some sort of fact sheet that you all do prepare for in person, I'm not sure if you do, but maybe a one pager just to summarize the key highlights of that report in person. And for social media, if there could be a social media sort of like post that gets created that we can share out, that has just those key summaries. Maybe it's like a 10 slider with like, you know, really kind of simple messaging around what are the key highlights this year. I think that will do much more to kind of get the word out in like smaller pieces. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Let me see. Tara?
Yeah, I was the second Patrick. That was the issue. Thank you, Patrick, for forwarding me the link. I appreciate being included in this. So one thing I really encourage is more interactivity. So things, rather than just presenting, I love the idea of the stations, and I feel like that's really successful. And one thing that really works at stations like that is if you limit them to like 4, you could actually have 4 different interpreters and one at each station to ensure that it feels like the Latino community is being as honored as the English one. And I want to really embrace that, especially in those neighborhoods. I feel like that's vital to ensuring that people feel like their voice is heard in those places. In addition, something that doesn't require language is often really useful. And I know that Josh over at Bergriggs does this stuff kind of all the time with the dots, or with just something that gets people up out of their chairs, can really help maintain attention. And then in addition to what was just said previously, which I really also appreciate, asking questions of the audience during the presentation, like how many of you understand this thing? And how many of you are engaged with this? Or what do you think of insert blank here, so that they're not falling. I mean, as much as I'm sure they're hanging on the edge of their chairs, so that they maintain that level of engagement that you're looking for, are some really, I think, foundational and fundamental things that we could do to improve the meeting itself.
Thank you, Tara. Crystal?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so I agree with all of the comments that have made thus far. I think they're great recommendations, like everyone has said. I also attended the workshop last year, and one thing that I do remember hearing multiple times was that community members wanted to have more information around the policies around the saltancy. So, for example, like even now, policies that are working on the green empowerment zone, or even just hearing a little bit more about the Lithium Valley Pacific Plan, or the Conservancy even. So while these things are not set in stone, they are being worked on, and it's an opportunity for community members to engage and advocate and participate if they like to. And so, yeah, just wanting to uplift that's a recommendation or a comment that I definitely heard multiple times at last year's workshop.
Thank you, Crystal. Darren.
Yeah, just a question. Is there if you're doing stations, is there going to be a funding station that highlights how much funding is available, how much has been spent, what remains, that kind of information?
Yeah, and I'll let Mario chime in, but I'll give it a try. Of course, that information, it's in the annual report, and I believe that will be covered on the overview presentation. I don't think that might be enough information for a dynamic type of breakout station on funding. But Mario, please chime in.
Yeah, I mean, funding, you throw numbers out at folks and they tend to, kind of lose interest. I guess I would maybe look for a more creative way to do that, or maybe some kind of poster that shows the funding, or maybe an update on like the federal funding and kind of where that is and where it's going. But we normally will throw out numbers like funding to date and funding that, upcoming funding. And, as far as going into the specific details, they're there in the budget table at the end of the annual report. If anybody wants to see like the really detailed lines of funding, they're all there. I just don't know how to gussy that up to make it, an interactive, station. But we certainly do cover it in the overview of the annual report. And then to Tom Septon's earlier point, this is just kind of hey, this is coming out. But when we get into the annual report, we do stop after each chapter and allow for a Q&A on, what we just presented, rather than go through like the whole thing. So we do, and maybe we can make those each stations where we do it that way instead. But it's normally good to do an overview and then break out into the stations and kind of break out what you just heard to get, more information. And you tend to get people gravitate to those stations that are most interested in that topic. But all these are great suggestions. We're taking notes, and there's some way that we can really get the the funding element in there. We'll certainly look at that, but I appreciate the suggestion.
Thank you. Patrick, is that a real hand now?
This is really me, and I'm dialing in from the airport, so I apologize for the headset, but I'm hoping it's working well. That just prompted my thinking. I think that's an excellent idea to focus on the not just the money that was spent, but the money that is required. And so, one of the things that I think about with the community engagement aspect of this is what are we asking people to do? I mean, we need to inform them, but how do we activate them? What do we get them focusing on? So I'm thinking funding retrospectively, but also funding prospectively, and what is needed for the program and for other efforts, right? Like some of the community-centric efforts that are required. and specific baskets of funds, and just get people starting to think about their lane and things that they can't eat the whole elephant, but they can maybe take a trunk or something and help with the effort. So that was just my reaction to some of the comments that were already made. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And Tom?
Regarding the question of illustrating funding, one way to do it would be to have a graphic of the Salton Sea and the various sources of funding that you do have, those that have been spent, those that are pretty much lined up and can be expected, and and the big open unknown of the unavailable funding. And for each of those funding sources, take a little arrow into a graphic of the sea and say it fills up this much, and this source that's already done has completed this, and this source that's yet to come will fill up this much. And then the big open empty part is the needed funding to actually get to a restoration.
Thank you, Tom. So we're going to be switching over to comments from attendees. And before I do that, I just want to echo a few of the things that stood up from what I heard from all the panelists today, the committee members. One of them, the importance of language. Yes, please. I mean, the language becomes too technical, too jargony. It loses the audience. The other thing, it's around how do we present the information? Maybe using your communications team to creatively think about how the report is presented, or the key pieces of the report might be a worthwhile, although time-consuming task. And with relation to Darren's question on the funding and the other comments, I also feel that it becomes very easy to get lost in exactly how much money has been committed to the 10-year plan and how much money has been spent, and whether every time there's money announced, whether that adds to the committed dollars or whether that's just securing the committed dollars. So it would be very helpful to spell out exactly how much has been committed, how much has been spent moving forward. And Miguel?
Yes, thank you, Sylvia, and thanks everybody for your comments. I'm taking a lot of notes here, and then wait to hear from folks from the attendee side. I just want to appreciate you chiming in here with your recommendations. I think they also hit home, but there's things that perhaps I myself or the team hasn't thought about. But some of the things, like plain language, that's on our list to do. It's actually part of our outreach plan that we recently announced back in December. But yeah, just wanted to perhaps I'll be reaching out to you guys individually to get a bit more clarity as of how we can make it happen. I think, Tom, that example of the graphic, being so detailed and how you laid it out, I think that's what we're looking for. And thank you for laying that out. I think that's something that's definitely worth exploring. It's always a recurring topic that folks want to talk about. But we also need to find a creative way of making it happen in a way that makes sense for folks. It's not just, us throwing numbers out there.
Thank you, Miguel. I will now go over to hands raised on the attendees list, and I see Michael's iPhone.
Thanks, Sylvia. Mike Cohen, Pacific Institute. And thanks to Miguel for requesting the feedback. One thing I think might be helpful is to reflect back, as Miguel just did a little bit, on previous comments that have been received and how the SSMP has incorporated those and changed direction or fleshed out or made its planning more robust in response to community engagement. I think people like to see what they're saying is being reflected and heard and then incorporated. That's one. And then the very detailed table that's included in the annual report talks about the statutory authorities a little bit and where that funding goes. But I think expanding on that, maybe in the workshops, talking about how some of that funding is available, but some of it's specifically limited or targeted to particular projects, so that people get a sense of what the different funding pots are, and then within that specific statutory direction, what flexibility might exist to help use that to best meet state and state objectives. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. And I have an Iron Dad with a raised hand.
Hi there. I am Iron Dad. I just wanted to provide the feedback. I really appreciate, this opportunity to allow the community to speak and give you feedback about the meeting format, and the annual report itself. The first thing I would say is if you'd like to increase community engagement, the best way to do that would be to stop throwing so many words at people and actually start making progress on some of the projects that you're reporting on. We're getting pretty desensitized to all of the words and very little action on the projects that the communities care about, which generally involve, the community access to wetlands, for example, things that benefit the communities themselves beyond just the vegetation enhancement and the surface roughening. I'd also like to say, to Daniela's point, I don't know of anyone in my community other than myself who's read through the report front to back, the 2024 report. It's a lot of information. One thing that you might consider is, not all of these projects are equally interesting to all of our community members. A lot of times they're more interested in the projects that are right next to their community. So if it's possible to break up the report, I know that it's already got sections for the different projects, but in some sort of executive summary, to break up the projects so that people can focus in on the projects that they find most impactful for themselves. And then finally, I just want to say, just be honest. A lot of times we get the impression that you're trying to put lipstick on a pig. I'm not going to mince words here. Things have not been going that well with the 10-year plan, and we want to understand the challenges that you're facing. If there's any way that we can help, we're used to a lot of kind of spin on the information that's put in front of us, and that makes us a lot less interested in engaging based on that information. And if somebody in the community brings up something that really is, let's say, out of scope, like water importation, that's not in the 10-year plan. It's irrelevant to the annual report. I think that it behooves everyone for you to just, honestly say that's not part of our plan. It's not in the annual report for a reason. It's not part of the 10-year plan, and we're here to discuss the projects that are part of the plan. Thanks again for hearing us.
Thank you. Okay. So that concludes this section, and thank you everyone for the feedback. And thank you, Miguel and Mario, for some of the responses and reflections you've provided. We're going to move now to our next item, which is an update on the 2025 Water Board Saltancy Workshop. And I will introduce now Stephanie Holstage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Stephanie Holstage. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the State Water Board, and am excited to talk to you about our upcoming Saltancy workshop. Next slide, please. So as you know, the State Water Board hosts this annual SSMP workshop to hear about the annual report and receive public comments. So State Water Board members and staff will be there, as well as the SSMP team. We usually have tribal members, community environmental organizations, local agencies, and other interested parties in attendance. The workshop this year will be May 21st from 9 a.m. until around 6 p.m. The end time of the workshop is approximate and is based on the number of public comments that are received. And we're very excited this year to be able to return to the Salton Sea region and be in person in Coachella Valley. We'll announce the location shortly. We're still working out the final details. And then the workshop will also be available via Zoom or via webinar if somebody would like to just watch and not provide any public comments. Next slide. So, this is similar to the previous slide. You can go to the next slide. So yeah, the location will be announced shortly. Live Spanish interpretation will be provided in all of those participation and viewing options. If anyone would like to request interpretation into other languages, you can email languageservices@waterboards.ca.gov by May 7th. And the earlier, the better. So we have the layout of the workshop will be similar to last year. So we will receive the presentations by the Salton Sea Management Program about their annual report. And then we will have 2 different times for public comment, one around before lunchtime and then one at the end of the workshop. We have 2 tentative panel topics. The first one is Salton Sea Management Program data collection and management. And then the second one is the 10-year plan, 6 years in, adapting to challenges and accelerating the work ahead. You can visit our website for more upcoming information, such as our public notice, which will be released in a couple of weeks, which will also include how to submit written comments and additional deadlines for things like that. And then the staff report will also be released shortly. You can also go to our webpage or that link to subscribe to email updates as things are released relating to the workshop. Go ahead to the next slide. Thanks. Yeah, and you can, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I don't have a slide about this, but I also just wanted to let everybody in this meeting know that we coordinated with the SSMP team in developing a new frequently asked questions fact sheet that I will put in the chat. It's available on our webpage, and I'll put it in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there an opportunity? Does anyone have any questions now?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions about the workshop, let me know.
I'm just curious, Stephanie, and maybe this happened because last year you had it in Sacramento, but before that, when you were hosting them here locally, there used to be a community panel.
Yes.
Did that, I mean, maybe is there just no time, or, I mean, what happened?
Yeah, so we kind of reformatted the workshop to be more focused only on Salton Sea Management Program team activities because of the length of the workshop was, I think it was 2 years ago, it was way over schedule. So we've just scaled it back a lot, and we've been relying on like the public comment periods for people to be more engaged in that way versus having it as a specific panel.
Questions from anybody else in the panel, in the committee?
I'd like to echo your question there. And I think the community perspective is really, really important, because otherwise our state efforts can become an echo chamber of the state efforts themselves and just be self-reinforcing and not necessarily taking many of the perspectives that might be embarrassing to the state into account. And sometimes those things are what call out the ways for the most constructive change to be had. And we've held, I mean, a few of us on this call have held community panels a number of times. I think Mr. Delara, Mr. Olmedo, Tom Sefton, myself have been involved in these community panels, and they also gave a structure and a forum for community members to be more present if they wanted to partake, and if there's anything they would like to present other than kind of a rushed comment, where if they really had something organized, it could be helpful. So there might be an opportunity to have a shorter community representation section that would be a very true voice of the people that are living there, and or maybe representation from some of the NGOs that are in this room that aren't necessarily part of the SSMP, but are facing real challenges, issues, opportunities on the ground.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. I know that we, the board, care about for sure with the community's input. So we'll take that into consideration.
It's really easy for the state to say things that pleases itself. And we appreciate it, you know, but it's easy to do that. And we've just seen it happen for so long that we got to find ways to give ourselves a chance to notice when we can do better.
Thank you. And Stephanie's email and contact information is there and included in the chat. So if you all want to reach out to her directly, she gave us the invitation to do so. So thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And in the next agenda item, I'm going to introduce Barbara Berry to give us an update on the Science Committee.
Thank you, and happy to be here. My name is Barbara Berry. I'm with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm going to be presenting on the Science Committee. The purpose of the Salton Sea Science Committee is to provide scientific expertise and guidance on Salton Sea Management Program projects and efforts. It's led by the California Natural Resources Agency in collaboration with California Department of Water Resources and California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I wanted to report on, or to give an update on what we have presented to the Salton Sea Science Committee for review during 2024 and what we plan to present to them in 2025. The Salton Sea Science Committee provides scientific expertise, and in 2024, we firstly outlined the objectives of the proposed Salton Sea Data Hub. The Science Committee reviewed the proposed concepts and vision for a web-based platform to create a collaborative environment where agencies and stakeholders are encouraged to participate and contribute. The comments from the Science Committee were taken into consideration in the drafting of the site. And secondly, the Department of Water Resources presented the draft adaptive management plan for dust suppression and vegetation enhancement, which builds on the dust suppression action plan released in July 2020. This document describes the current dust suppression and vegetation enhancement projects, identifies lessons learned, serves as a roadmap for future projects, and is designed as a living document that will be updated as more information and data are gathered. The draft document was presented to the Science Committee for independent scientific review. Comments were submitted by the Scientific Committee to DWR for consideration. And next slide. For 2025, we have several Science Committee tasks planned. Firstly, for 2025, we'll start by thanking Ms. Carol Roberts for the time and expertise she committed as the Science Committee Chair, as she announced her retirement in February this year and will be stepping down. We will discuss the next steps in the nomination process for a new committee chair with the Science Committee. CDFW, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, will give a demonstration of the Salton Sea Hub site. This will cover a brief overview of the tools and applications on the Hub site platform. CDFW staff will demonstrate the applications, tools, and submission process of finalized data collection. Next, we will work with the Science Committee to update the Salton Sea Species Conservation Habitat Monitoring and Adaptive Management Plan. Quite a mouthful. The plan is a living document that is used to guide post-project monitoring activities and management. The plan needs to be reviewed and updated to reflect changes and updates to the Species Conservation Habitat Project. Next, we'll present the what we are calling the gap analysis that was completed by CDFW staff earlier in 2024. The gap analysis was an effort to review the monitoring and implementation plan objectives document completed in 2022 and compare those objectives to the studies and monitoring activities that are now occurring at the Salton Sea, taking that information and trying to determine if there are any objectives not being addressed. The analysis looked at available research, work plans, and annual updates, and this information was used to reprioritize our efforts in aerial bird surveys and aquatic invertebrate monitoring. And that concludes my update. And if there are any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Barry, are the reports that you mentioned on your update for 2024, is there a link to them or the plans?
Sorry. The vegetation adaptive management plan, I believe will be finalized soon. And I think, Miguel, will that be put on the SSMP website? Yeah, I'm getting a nod.
Right.
And the vision that we had had the science committee go over, we weren't planning on making that public. That was a guidance document for our Salton Sea hub site. The hub site itself is in draft form, and we do plan to make that public. We're shooting by the end of this calendar year, and that will be available to everyone to look at the data and also to submit and make publicly available to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
No problem.
And Patrick. Patrick, do you have a question?
I just said it, but I was muted, so I'll try it again. I was wondering if you could explain a little more about the gap analysis. What is exactly the gap that's being identified, and what's going to be done with that information?
We wanted to see with the CDFW was taking a lead on implementing the monitoring implementation plan, the document that came out in 2022 that identified many monitoring objectives for the Salton Sea for trend analysis and determining the status of species present, air resources, and the like. And we reviewed those objectives, and then we looked at the resources available to us, including the annual work plan, studies that have been reported that are occurring at the Salton Sea. And we wanted to get an idea of, are the objectives listed in the monitoring implementation plan, the MIP, are they being addressed, whether by CDFW or other agencies, private, local community groups? And we took that information and did identify some gaps. We were impressed with the amount of work that is being done and is planned on being done by a lot of our local community groups. But we plan to take that information and look at what CDFW is doing and see if we can reprioritize our efforts to address some of those missing objectives. And that's what I mentioned about the aquatic invertebrate monitoring and the aerial bird surveys, which had not been occurring for some time. So,
does that also deal with health and safety issues, or strictly habitat?
The MIP does identify community needs, objectives, and health and safety issues. A lot of those were being addressed. I'd have to look at the plan specifically to see if there were any missing. But we do plan on presenting that information also at the water board with our finalized conclusions.
Okay. I think that's super important information.
Agreed.
And I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. So thank you, Barbara, for the update, and we can move on to the next presentation. So we have a presentation on grant opportunities from the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. So at this point, I welcome Maximiliano Ochoa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Maximiliano Ochoa. I'm a project coordinator with the Coachella Valley Mountain Conservancy, and today I'm going to be providing a brief presentation about the grant opportunities that we have at the Conservancy. So, next slide. Next slide. So the Conservancy is a state agency. We are one of the 10 state conservancies. We're in the Coachella Valley. Our mission is to protect the natural and cultural resources of the Coachella Valley, our scenic wildlife, cultural, geologic, and our recreational resources that make the Coachella Valley a splendid place to live. And next slide. This is the Spanish version. Slide. The Coachella Valley Mountain Conservancy boundary is informed by the Coachella Valley Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan. It is important to note that a lot of our grants are restricted to the conservancy area of the Coachella Valley. There are some exceptions, which I will talk more about specifically in some of the grants that do provide exceptions. But other than that, there's limitations to where the Conservancy can fund grants. Yeah. Next slide. In terms of eligibility and the application process, the eligibility is for local or state public agencies, joint power authorities, JPAs, nonprofits with a 501c3, tribes that are recognized federal or state level. The application, for the most part, is fairly similar. There's a pre-application period that we ask for any applicants to submit. That way we can review and see if the project that they have in mind fits the mission of the grant guidelines and the Conservancy's mission. There will be, each grant has their own notice of funding availability and the project guidelines, which we strongly encourage any applicants to review. Once the pre-application has been completed, then the full narrative proposal is due. The staff and committees will review it, and it goes to the board for consideration and final awards or approvals. Next slide. And this is the Spanish version, so we can go into the next one, please. So one of the first props that we have, or grants that we have, is Prop 84. It's important to note that the Coachella Valley Mountain Conservancy, since its inception, was predominantly focused on land acquisition for conservation purposes. So the Prop 4, the Safe Drinking Water Quality and Supply, Flood Control, River and Coastal Protection Bond Act of 2006, was made available for land acquisition specifically. The Conservancy received 36 millions at the time, and we have been using this money for land acquisitions. Currently, we have 6.2 millions remaining. For the land acquisition, it is important to, as I previously mentioned, it's important to keep in mind that the land acquisitions for the funds, they have to be within the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan. And if it's outside, it must directly support the Coachella Valley Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan, and or helping fulfilling the California's 30 by 30, which is the global effort, but in California's executive order in 2022, the commits conserving 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030 as part of the broader effort to fight climate change, protect biodiversity, and expand access to nature for all Californians. Specifically, the land acquisition portion of it has to be a biological resource, such as important plants or wildlife habitat, or hydrogelic features that potential to enhance the carbon sequestration, cultural resources, recreational options consistent with habitat values, and significant aesthetic attributes. And if at any point anybody has any questions, please just feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat and I'll try to answer as we go. But I will also have time towards the end to answer any questions that we have. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And this is the Spanish version of it. So next slide. The second funding that we have is the Prop 1, which is the Water Quality Supply and Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2024. The Conservancy received 10 million for projects related to water infrastructure and water restorations. The Conservancy currently does have 2.2 million remaining. This is one of the grants that unfortunately does have a deadline. The initial NOFA was issued out in December of 2024. The pre-application is already closed. And if there's any funding remaining for Prop 1, we will be issuing out a notice of funding availability in the fall of 2025. But for now, this grant is closed for considerations. Next slide. Slide. Proposition 4, as we may know, Proposition 4 is coming up. That's the Safe Drinking Water, Wildfire Prevention, Drought Preparation, Flood Protection, Extreme Heat Mitigation, Clean Energy, and Workforce Development Bond of 2024. The Conservancy has been earmarked for 11 million for the Coachella Valley Mountain Conservancy. And as of now, we don't have any grant guidelines or notice of funding availability, but we do expect to be issuing one out in the fall of 2025. The guidelines will be posted on our website along with the CNRA's website. If you are, we will also be issuing out through social media announcements. So do follow us, but we also have a listserv. So if you want to be added to that listserv, feel free to reach out to me or email me. I'll provide that email towards the end of my presentation. Yeah. Next slide. And this is the Spanish version too. Next slide, please. Another funding that we have is the Proposition 68. This is the California Drought Water Park Climate Coastal Protection and the Outdoor Access for All Act of 2018. The Conservancy received 7 million for local grant programs. Currently, we do have 3.5 million remaining available. And this grant does not have a hard deadline, so the applications are accepted on an ongoing basis. As a reminder, we would encourage for pre-applications, consultations before writing the full application. Once the pre-application is approved, then we would invite the applicant to do the full application. And I will explain more about this grant in the following slides. Next slide. Slide. And so the board, in the Conservancy Board and the Prop 68 priorities have that under Prop 68, at least 20% of all funds will be set aside for serving severely disadvantaged communities. That is less than 60% in area medium income. Any projects implemented by the CVMC board must meet the mission of the Coachella Valley Conservancy. There are 3 priorities that the Conservancy has highlighted for this particular funding availability, and that's the access to the outdoor recreation, preserving cultural or historical resources, and responding to climate change. Next slide. Slide. The access to outdoor recreation. This is on visitor-serving improvements, trails, acquisition of lands or restoration of natural features and habitat areas that expand public access, and community access projects. Some of the examples shown above is like signs for conserved areas. We have the replacement of the restrooms at the Thousand Palms Preserved. We also have projects like access to the trails on the right side trail signage, and also like walkways. So those are some of the examples that access to the outdoor can emphasize under this funding opportunity. Next slide. Next slide. For objective number 2 is preserving cultural or historical resources. This is on stabilizing or restoring historic buildings, monuments, or infrastructure. We also have the protecting archaeological or cultural artifacts and creating improvements or interpretative features that educate about habitat conservation, cultural artifacts, or local history. The picture here is of a Shumway Ranch. CBMC acquired this property back in 2018, and they've been doing a couple of different projects out there. And one of the projects that this acquisition now allows the CBMC and partners and conservation partners to do is host educational workshops for students from the valley, or training purposes for like the conservation corps. So there's various different opportunities that Shumway Ranch provides for conservation purposes. And it's also a historic site in terms of homestead. Next slide. Slide. And the third objective is the responding to climate change. Responding to climate change can be restoring open spaces or habitat, land use management that promotes urban greening, enhances compost, grazing, and fire prevention. Some of the
Next slide, please.
examples.
Thank you.
Some of these examples is the composting site at the Indio High School with the students, removing of tamarisk trees for watershed restorations, and reforestations for tree planting at the Torres Martinez site. Next slide. One of the things that the state as a whole uses is the common virus screen, and we also utilize this to identify or classify some of the projects that we fund. The Conservancy has approximately 60% of all grants that have been awarded under different grants have been to areas of severely what would be considered DAC or SDAC communities, disadvantaged communities, or severely disadvantaged communities. And another thing is that under Prop 4, the funding will require 40% of all funds to be allocated to disadvantaged communities and 10% to severely disadvantaged communities. You can check out the Common Virus Screen 4.0 at the website. I don't have that website, but pretty sure we can provide that if anybody knows it. But yeah, next slide, please. And that's my information. So if you have any questions about the grant, or if you want to just set up a consultation call, I'll be more than happy to chat with you, see if any projects that you have in mind meets the objective, the guidelines of the Conservancy. And yeah, follow us on social media. But I can take any questions if there's any questions from the audience. Go ahead, Carrie.
Hey, thank you so much, Max. Wondering if there are ever any exceptions to geographical locations having to do with the Salton Sea. Some of the most disadvantaged communities who are breathing, as of today, the worst air quality in the country are next to the sea. And this is just like the top quarter of the Salton Sea mostly. Are there any opportunities for projects further down the sea?
I don't have that answer. The only exception is for land acquisitions. So project-wise, there hasn't been any exception that the board has granted before.
But the exception of land acquisitions has been outside of that typical zone?
Yeah, but it's in part of the Coachella Valley Multiple Species Habitat Conservation, which is part of the corridor in terms of like the what would be the Chacualo Monument area, the
Okay.
San Jacinto Mountains, or in the Morongo area.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Mhm.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Well, thank you, Maximiliano, for providing us
Thank
this
you.
information. Awesome. So at this point, we're getting close to the conclusion of our meeting. If you can move the slide, we're going to take public comments. So if there's any of the attendees who have comments, and there's instructions on how to ask a question or comment. On webinar, you can click the raise hand button to request to speak. And you may also submit a question using the Q&A. If anybody's joining us on the phone, you can press hashtag number 2. And each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. I see Jasmine Phillips.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Jasmine Phillips. My question is directed to the Science Committee. I would like to know if the results of the 2024 Salton Sea Fish Survey has been posted online, or if it will be posted online and available to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
The fish survey we conducted in November, we included the results in the annual report, which will be available shortly. But in short, this was a limited effort of using trammel nets, and we can't conclusively say that the results from this are applied to the entire Salton Sea. But this effort that occurred over a week, the only fish that were caught were at the river mouth, I believe, of the Alamo River. We did not catch any fish in the Salton Sea proper.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other questions or public comments? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Miguel just to review any action items.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair Sylvia. Just to recap real quick on a conversation, thank you all for chiming in with your ideas and the work you're doing. Just to recap real quick, Daniela has invited us to submit public comments, acknowledging that there has been an extension for comment submittals. So I believe she has already shared a link with us. So we will get it to the rest of the group shortly after our meeting, along with any other links that perhaps made it into the chat box. Also, Carrie has invited us to the event at Vista Del Mar, April 26th. Perhaps I could take this opportunity to mention about the seed collection event that we're planning. This is more of a save the date on our end, getting ready with our flyer, but please note on your calendars that we're gonna have this event. That's again, April 26th. That's a Saturday morning, 9 to 11. And we will be doing a seed collection event. As you might be familiar with our vegetation enhancement projects, we're looking for more seeds to expand the vegetation on this project area. So we want to collect the same seed that's coming off of the plants at this project sites. So we'll have a volunteer opportunity for folks to come and lend a hand and see firsthand those plants and help us grab that seed that will at some point make its way to other areas at the Salton Sea. So again, April 26th, and then it's going to be followed by the event that Ecomedia Compass will be hosting right after our meeting or right after our event, which is not too far from where we're going to meet. I think it's about a half-mile drive or walk. So it should be fun. Back-to-back events near the community in Salton City. Then we heard all of your comments and recommendations for the upcoming public meetings. Thank you all for providing those as well. And I might have some follow-up questions with you all, but I'll reach out individually via email to see if we can set up a time and make the best use of time in the future for that. And Joe, I see your hand up. You want to chime in here?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Miguel. And thanks, everyone, for such a productive meeting. I know this meeting was intended to cover the annual report. I just wanted to note, one reflection that I'm having, kind of dovetailing off of Carrie's comment earlier about ways that our program can do a better job of incorporating input and ideas from members of the public and folks in the region. And reacting to Maximiliano's presentation just now about funding opportunities that CVMC has, I just want to note that there was a $10 billion climate bond that was passed in November, and the majority of that funding is going to be rolled out in, over the course of the next couple years. Much of it is going to be in competitive programs that are going to take applications and make funding decisions based on that. Now, certainly our program is sizing up opportunities where we can apply for funding in ways that would expand the reach of our projects. We're taking a very close look at that. But I would also like to have a conversation with this group at some point, to the extent that, folks have ideas or, programs that they're interested in applying for, and just think about ways that we might be able to partner up or at least share, ideas and information, so that this region and all of us are working together to just submit as many competitive applications for funding as we possibly can, so that we can draw more funding and advance more of the projects, whether they're restoration projects or just things that we know the community has been asking for and needs. We want to try to advance all of the above. So maybe at the next meeting, or feel free to reach out to me to the extent folks have ideas. Very eager to keep the conversation going and figure out ways that we can partner. So thanks.
Thank you, John. Miguel, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Joe. And just to answer one question that came in from one of our committee members, asking if the 10 billion funding is state or federal. This is from the climate bonds. So this is state funding, just to be clear. And then just to quickly end our recap of our meeting, we heard from Stephanie from the water boards inviting us to the May 22nd event. Also, she gave us a tentative location, or gave us the news that it's going to be sometime in Coachella. Hopefully we can hear from her soon where that's going to happen. And of course, we'll help the water boards get the word out on location and times as we get closer to the date. Then we heard from my colleague Barbara on the science committee update and the important work that they're doing there. Then followed by the opportunities for the grant opportunities that the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy is offering. And Max kindly offered to get questions or anything that you might have for him to go along those opportunities that they have for the region. And that's the tail end of our meeting. Thank you all for participating. I'll send it back over to our co-chair Sylvia Paz to end our meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you to the team from the state, and thank you, Joe, for joining us again, and to all of our committee members, thank you for being a part of this work and continuing to advance and advocate for the Salton Sea region. I look forward to seeing you at the upcoming meetings and workshops. And so have a good rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you all.
Yay. Thank you. Good work.